Welcome to Strategic Labs. Now, when you think of a global power, what comes to mind? Big armies, right? Economic muscle? Well, what if the most effective empire in the world doesn't have borders, doesn't fly a flag, and does its best work in complete silence? Today, we are diving deep into Edward H. Whitmore's incredible book, The Silent Empire. We're going to explore a kind of power that isn't built on land or money, but on secrets, timing, and absolute precision. We're stepping into the world of British intelligence. You know, at the end of the day, there are really two ways to exert power. On one hand, you've got the sledgehammer. It's loud, it's obvious, it's all about brute force. But then there's the surgeon's hand. It's precise, it's subtle, and most of the time, you never even see it coming. And that's what we're talking about today. A philosophy where the surgeon's hand always wins. An approach where quiet influence is seen as far more powerful and far more lasting than any overt display of force. This, right here, is the DNA of British intelligence. And this is so much more than just being sneaky. It's a whole strategic doctrine. See, subtlety lets you make a move without anyone really noticing or reacting. Perfect timing can turn a tiny action into a history-changing event. And precision? Well, precision lets you hit a critical target with almost zero risk to yourself. It's the difference between just reacting to the world and actively shaping it from behind the curtain. So where did this whole idea get its trial by fire? We've got to go back to its ultimate proving ground, the Second World War. This was a time when intelligence wasn't just a support role. It was a weapon of war, plain and simple. The war created this desperate, urgent need for an edge. Any edge. And Britain found that edge in intelligence. It really kicked off in 1939 with the founding of the legendary code-breaking hub at Bletchley Park, and it all led up to the deceptions that made D-Day a success in 1944. You can draw a straight line from these milestones to some of the most critical turning points of the entire war. The first absolute game-changer was a program codenamed Ultra. Now, this wasn't just eavesdropping. No way. This was like having a live feed from inside the enemy's headquarters. By cracking the German Enigma codes, Allied command could read the Nazis' most secret messages, predicting everything from where U-boats would be to where armies were moving. But here's the thing. Just getting the info was only half the battle. The real stroke of genius was in that last step, how they shared it. To protect the secret that they'd broken the codes, every piece of ultra intelligence was given a cover story. They'd pretend it came from a spy on the ground or a reconnaissance flight. It was an incredible act of discipline, and because of it, the Germans never figured it out. And this is where the whole story just gets wild. Because once you know the absolute truth, it gives you the power to create the perfect lie. A lie so powerful and so believable, it could literally change the outcome of the war. And that lie was called Operation Fortitude. The goal was massive. To pull off the D-Day landings at Normandy, the Allies had to convince Hitler and his entire high command that the real invasion was coming somewhere else, at Pas-de-Calais. It was the biggest con job in military history. And it worked. So how'd they do it? Get this. They built an entire fake army. We're talking inflatable tanks, phony radio signals, and a network of double agents, feeding the Germans exactly what they wanted them to hear. The MVP was an agent codenamed Garbo, who tricked the Germans into believing he was their top spy in Britain. On the morning of D-Day, he sent a message insisting the Normandy invasion was just a diversion, which convinced Hitler to keep his best tank divisions away from the real fight, saving countless Allied lives. Now, of course, these lessons didn't just vanish when the war ended. Not at all. The principles of precision and quiet influence were just adapted for a new kind of conflict, the cold, long game of global diplomacy. So, as Britain's physical empire began to shrink, this invisible one just got smarter. Diplomatic posts, embassies, they became these dual-purpose hubs. On the surface, they were all about official state business. But just beneath, they were nerve centers for gathering intelligence, allowing them to shape events from the inside out. And that collaborative spirit from the war, it evolved into what is arguably the most powerful intelligence sharing network on Earth, the Five Eyes. This alliance creates a seamless web of information exchange, basically giving each member a global view and multiplying their power. It's really the bedrock of Western intelligence today. Okay, we're about to make a huge jump from the post-war world straight into the digital age. It's a massive leap. So before we do that, if you're enjoying this breakdown, please take a second to like, subscribe, share, and leave your comment below. It really does make a huge difference for the channel. All right, so here's the big question, right? How does a philosophy built around subtlety and precision hold up in the loud, chaotic world of the 21st century? Well, the core ideas stay the same, but the battlefield was about to change completely. The whole world of physical spies, of dead drops in the park and secret meetings, it wasn't gone, but it was being overshadowed. The silent empire had to learn to speak a whole new language and operate in a brand new, intangible domain, cyberspace. And the difference is just staggering. Think about it. A classic Cold War op was physical, incredibly risky for the agent, and took a long time to unfold. A modern cyber op? It's digital, it happens in an instant, and this is the crucial part, it's often completely deniable. It demanded a whole new kind of tradecraft. But that core philosophy is still there. This isn't about flashy, noisy hacks that get on the news. The strategy is to get inside a system quietly, to watch, to learn, and then, only when necessary, to surgically disrupt a key function. It's the difference between blowing up the door and silently changing the lock from the inside. They might not even know you were there. So when you step back and look at the big picture, what's the real legacy here? What are the core ideas that have survived a century of unbelievable change? It really all rests on these 4 pillars. First, precision. The simple idea that a scalpel is almost always better than a sledgehammer. Second, timing. Knowing that when you do something is just as important as what you do. Third, influence. Mastering the art of shaping outcomes without anyone knowing you're involved. And finally, adaptation. The genius of applying these same core ideas to whatever the new battlefield is. Now look, we've only had time to scratch the surface today. The book is packed with some absolutely mind-blowing stories and strategic thinking. To explore these operations in greater detail, purchase the full book using the link in the description. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. In our world, which is just filled with noise, with 24/7 news, and very loud displays of power, is it possible that the most potent, most enduring form of influence is the one we never actually see or hear? Does the greatest power really lie in silence? Thanks for joining us at Strategic Labs.